Hi, I'm Mark Diano.
I'm Desiree Hadley, and welcome to the 8th episode of Hold the Line with Mayor Baraka. Now, Mayor, today we're talking about the new restrictions around the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also going to talk about the election and the new legalization of marijuana here in New Jersey.
Sure.
So I want to lead with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
So you just incited new restrictions citywide. And there are also some restrictions as far as curfew for only certain zip codes where there's a spike in cases, correct?
Right.
So Newark now has a 19% positivity rate while the state has 7.74% positivity rate.
Right.
With these new restrictions, I know you're looking to see a decline in the positive cases, but do you expect for people to be more defiant the second time around with this new?
Well, I think the only real defiance is coming from, like, at this point, store owners, restaurants, places like that who have gotten really lackadaisical at this point, but also public transportation, businesses in general. Everybody's gotten lackadaisical. It's adding to this number.
Right.
But I think generally the people are afraid. As a matter of fact, we have more people testing now than we ever did, which means that people are conscious of what's going on, and that's a good thing.
Right.
So we've had these three stubborn zip codes, the two in the north and the one in the east. You just brought up an interesting point about shops because they might have a higher concentration of little stores and restaurants, downtown districts,
Eateries, yeah.
But then also there's a language situation. Do you think the language barrier is part of this reason that we just can't seem to put a dent in these three places?
Well, I mean, that may be the case. I'm not sure. I know we try to put out as much information as we can in all languages. One of the things that I think may be a problem when it comes to language is contact tracers. If there are not enough contact tracers that the state is using that speak multiple languages, then there's going to be an issue with communication. And people are afraid as well. So it's not just the language, it's the fact that we're in this situation where this government has focused in and attacked people, and people in our community are afraid. They're afraid to answer the phone. They're afraid to go get tested. They're afraid to do all these other specific things because of that. But I want to note that in the East Ward, many of the undocumented community are getting tested.
So that's a good segue into the election. And now with a new administration coming in, do you feel obviously you feel we're going to get a lot more resources and the things that COVID has exposed in terms of healthcare and things like that.
Yeah, first we gotta get this guy out of there. I mean,
That's going to be hard.
he's like dug in. You know what I mean? I mean, we got to get him to leave so that we can begin to heal and move forward. And I think that the president-elect understands the science and will do the things that's necessary in order to try to curb this, and that's important. So hopefully we can do this quicker because the virus is not waiting for the transition plan.
What about in general, though, in terms of just having a Democratic administration and more help for cities?
Well, prayerfully that they understand that. I mean, it doesn't normally or just naturally translate into these people understanding what's going on in these cities because they're Democrat. It's easier for us to get them to understand that, as opposed to fighting with people who are intent on doing the opposite of what you need in order to be successful. At least these people are willing to at least be open-minded and discuss and see this stuff. And we still have to push them. We still have to push them to see and do what's necessary for these cities.
Have you had a conversation with your fellow Howard graduate about any of these issues?
No, not yet. I mean, I spoke to her early on, before the election began, before the presidential election even began. And so I'm confident that she understands a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. And, we'll do everything in her power to, influence what's happening on the national level to help what's happening in these cities.
So I just want to touch on the vaccine really quick. I know Dr. Fauci was saying that the vaccine will be available soon. So do you expect Norcas to be, 100% to go in and just get vaccinated right away? Or do you think this vaccine being available would help to decrease the numbers? I mean, there are some people who feel like it's dangerous, it's not dangerous, but they're a little skeptical, I'll say that.
People are scared. And I don't see Norcas, just like I don't see many people rushing to take the vaccine right away. I think eventually they will, because moving around and what's going on and the danger of it is going to force people to do that. But especially if they begin seeing the impact that it's having, I think that people will eventually take the vaccine. And I do believe, the only way we get out of this is if we have a safe vaccine that's able to be given to the general public. We need one, that's for sure.
I guess there's a trust issue too, in that, if the president-elect and the administration, the new administration coming in, can vouch for that vaccine and vouch for the distribution, I think a lot of people will be more apt to trust it.
Well, I think scientists should vouch for it, not politicians. That real scientists and doctors should, come out and say this is safe, and show us that it's safe, and that it's working. They're saying it's 90% effective, which is probably unheard of. But we need to see that first, and I would urge people to be sure and to get information, absolutely, because I'm going to do the same thing. I would not advocate people to do things that I wouldn't do.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears to the legalization of marijuana. So I know, Mark, you wanted to touch on Ron.
Kind of buried in all the other election news is this is a big deal.
Sure.
67% of the voters in New Jersey voted for it. I know there's blowback from people like Senator Ron Rice, Prosecutor Ted Stevens, clergy, that feel that this will have some negative impact on African American community. And Ron Rice specifically talked about, the cigarette ads and the booze ads and how everything's
Sure.
going to fall to this
Sure.
community. And then, you look at Colorado and all these other places, and the suburban towns say, we don't want it here. And so it falls into the cities. What do you anticipate, what kind of problems do you anticipate with it?
Well, I think historically they're correct, and they're 100% right to be cautious and leery of legalizing a drug that is going to target our communities, given what's happened with alcohol, with tobacco, and all those other specific things. I think what we have the ability to do now that we have not done is to get on the ground before this thing happens in New Jersey and be able to regulate that on a local and municipal level, and not let these grand institutions, the state, and all these people make decisions about what's happening for us locally. That local voters, local bodies, local elected officials should have a say-so if they want it, and how it should be organized, and how it should be set up, zone it, tax it, everything they need to say, even if we only want 5, if we only want 6, and they can't be near this or they can't be near that. I think locally we should have the authority to do that.
The unintended consequences, anytime there's any kind of movement like this, there's unintended consequences. And I know you're thinking about those, what happens to the illegal market? Does it go into different places? You go to the marijuana store there, the cocaine dealer's there, and things like that. How are you preparing for those unintended consequences?
Well, we have to set up infrastructure. We've already begun in Newark, putting together the laws to get ready, the zoning laws to extract fees and revenue, so we can set up what's necessary to monitor, to regulate here in the city. And to create opportunity to create revenue for the city itself around education and all kind of other things as well. The worst drugs that are affecting our community are already legal.
Yeah.
And that's what, I think about all the time, right? So the legal kind of Percocets and all of those kind of drugs that have these opioids that have plagued our community and been flooded in our neighborhoods have a worse effect on our community than any other drug at this point. And it's factually proven that it leads to heroin abuse. And so that is my greatest concern. And those drugs are already legal, right? And so our job is to focus on that in a way that derails that altogether, through education, through intervention and interdiction, all of those things. So it's really not about legalization more than it's about education and about the kind of atmosphere or community that you grow up in, the kind of poverty and depression and all the other things that leads to drug abuse and drug addiction. are the things that we have to deal with and educate people around. So we're not having this kind of addiction to illegal substances, right?
So there's a potential for people to make money who own dispensaries. So how will Norcas benefit, from that potential if the price tag is so high to even apply for a dispensary license?
That's why we should be focusing on what the social justice part of it is going to be. Right now, they're crafting legislation. I've spoken to many of the legislators, testified a few times around how that's possible. How do you, in communities that were ravaged by the war on drugs, that focused on marijuana, that got people in jail because of this, that denies them the opportunity to get loans, to get jobs, to get financial aid, all of these things, housing, that these things have to be repaired. And so you cannot stop people from getting involved in this industry. We need to create a pathway, whether it's waiving fees, creating a capital fund that helps these businesses, requiring businesses to have local co-partners in their development. All of these things are something that we need to contemplate. And like, how is it possible that people are going to be incarcerated
Right.
for selling marijuana on the same block that people are now selling it legally?
Right.
So I guess what you're saying is that an equal part of this is building an expungement infrastructure, a forgiveness infrastructure to get people out of jail, back in the street, get them educated, get their driver's licenses back, put them back in society for the crime that they committed that is no longer a crime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that has to be debated and argued down in Trenton, but we have to come to some medium, some compromise. Or else it's really just a social injustice if we allow that to take place.
All right.
Let's go back to the COVID for 1 second,
Yeah,
Mayor.
please.
We're almost, we've got about 3 minutes left, so just talk a little bit about something we've talked about before. And that is the difficulty under New Jersey rules to have a governor trying to make rules for Wantage Township in Sussex County and Newark, New Jersey.
So mathematically, if our numbers are 3 times higher than the state's, and if we do the same thing that the state is doing, we will always be behind the state, because the state will advance and we will advance too. We just won't advance to the rate that they are. That's just mathematics, right? It's just science. So at some point we have to do a little more than what the state is doing in order to have the same results that the state is doing. And we have to concentrate on specific places so we can go further than the state, which is what we did before, which is why our numbers were better than the state at some point. If we just do what the state asks us to do, then we'll always be behind and we'll be putting our people at greater risk than the state is putting other people at. And those things are the things that need to be contemplated when these decisions are being made, over and over again. There's this whole thing that they say, oh, you can catch COVID in the morning, right? You can catch it at 12. That's absolutely factual. But after 8 o'clock, more people are congregating. More people are going to parties, events. That's just facts. And to overlook that is just illogical, right? It's just not logical to think you're going to have an impact on this by allowing these regular things to take place. You have to curtail some of that, scale back that. And so I have to be the bad guy. I have to be the mean father in the state, the person that people are going to be talking about, making memes about, but I don't care, because at the end of the day, people are happy because 24 people died in the state in the last couple of days, and they say, oh, 24, we had hundreds. 24 people dying in 2 or 3 days is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Easy to say if
we're
it's
so
not you.
desensitized now,
Yeah, right.
because the number was so big,
Sure.
We have 40 people die in 3 or 4 months, 45. So they say, oh, that's nothing. We had 30 in a day. 45 people dying in 3 or 4 months is outrageous.
Yeah.
Easy to say if it's
Right.
not
If
you
we
or
have
your
40
family.
homicides in 3 months,
It's
Right.
crazy.
people will be going bananas if we have 40 homicides. They'd be down here marching.
So we're out of time, Mayor. You have a final word on this?
Yeah, ultimately, I think that the community is a community. We're not a city of individuals. We're a city of neighborhoods, of communities, and we have to act like we're in a community, in a neighborhood, and look out for each other.
Okay,
I
Mayor.
agree. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much.